welcome back to a brand new and yet somehow strikingly familiar season of Dimension 20.
Blimey, Brennan, what a season.
Blimey, cool blimey.
You fully quitting twice was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
What can you do? I mean, literally, what can you do? Simulacrum is the funniest spell in the world. It's like you made a British version of yourself out of Snow, who's a clone. Every time I see the art of K2 with the straight as the lines on the Union Jack, I go, this is you. Who could have predicted? Certainly not me. Certainly not me.
I love it. And then I have to talk to you about the Porter Jace reveal. I was like in LaGuardia when I watched that, and my friend was about an hour behind in the episode, and he texted me, he's like, I can't believe they fake killed Wanda Childa. I'm like, I'm gonna be so real, I forgot that happened this episode, and I can't tell you why.
Oh my god.
Such a good reveal. Like, I know that was kind of inspired by Emily just consistently saying, I think Porter's evil, but how did that like work out in your brain? Because you've been thinking about this at least since sophomore year.
Absolutely. So there's nothing funnier to me than yes-anding the thing, because my players are the funniest people on the planet, and they love to goof. They love to goof and they love to riff. And as a dungeon master, I'm tasked with keeping things on the rails and making sure there's a plot and the villains are doing stuff and yada yada. So it's like, how do I be playful? It's like I can't I can't disrupt, because then we're all disrupting. They can't move it back on the rails. They don't know what the rails are. So I do one of two things in my head. Constantly yank at the players to be like, come back to the plot, or go to them where their bit is and go, yeah, this is a funny bit. And also, the longer you spend in it, the more it's becoming the rails. Whatever you goof around in is going to be the plot. And that's it's so much easier to go with the energy rather than against it. Yeah. So that's a lot of what it is it's like, cool, Emily is suspicious of Porter. That makes it easier if he's the bad guy, like that. And that becomes the joy of following those instincts.
I love it. And then I love the rat grinders and how they're just this dichotomy, and Kimberly being jealous that her parents are alive is the most psychotic teenage nonsense, and I absolutely loved it. Talk to me about kind of leaning into their not just like that they are the opposite of the bad kids, but their corruption, because they were really sweet as the high five heroes before they kind of followed Kipper Lily down this path.
That's an interesting. So there's an interesting question there, right? I think that for a lot of it, there were like hints, and most of the things we've seen of their sweetness are contextual from like bits of writing, little things, investigations. But I think that you can see a lot also. It's both, right? There are elements that were not always like they are now, but the seeds of what they are now are there in the past. Yeah. And I think that when you look at the high five heroes, right? It's also to kind of underline that there's and then eventually becoming the rat grinders, there's a indication there of Kipper Lily's focus. Because yeah, the high five heroes is sweet, but it's also sort of a indication that Kipper Lily is like pushing them towards for lack of a better word, like, do we have something that we're about? Like, the bad kids get their name because they've all been given detention on the first day, and it's connected to their story. Whereas you get the sense from the high five heroes that it's not actually describing anything. It's like the person being like, our inside joke is going to be high fives, and you're like, well, everyone high fives, right? It's like so there's an indication there for me, at least, that Kipper Lily is trying to make a camaraderie right away that is not actually there. It's not based in something that happened to them. It's sort of, for me, it's funny because I think the high five heroes, part of it is sweet, but there's actually something even a little bit sinister to it, to me, of being like, we're the high five heroes, and you're like, you've pitched a name, we all just met, we don't have anything going yet. Like, we all high-fived! And you're like, well, you high-fived right when we all got together for the first time. So I think that it's both. There's parts about it that are like, oh yeah, they used to be different, but also there's seeds of stuff there in the beginning, I think.
How do you think they're going to diverge now that they don't have Kipper Lily leading them? Because correct me if I'm wrong, she basically killed all of them to bring them back as these like darker versions of themselves, which is horrifying.
Yeah, I think that like the future of that group is very like, I think I leave it to like the players, but as you're saying with Kipper Lily, like her leadership of that group, like to me, the moment that is the fundamental, like the very like critical to the season and understanding, I think, is that killing of Lucy Frostblade, where it's like that is the moment where power and the opportunity for power is chosen over all else, and the participation of everybody in that the other rat grinders came in and like they killed Lucy Frostblade is like the ultimate like, oh, like we can understand wanting to have the status that the bad kids have. This was not worth that. It is not acceptable. Even if you really want to have something, you can't kill an innocent person who is also your best friend to get it. That is evil. Yeah. And so I think that that's really the turning point for them.
And I had a thought, because I was rewatching freshman year, and there's a group that Golden Horde is talking to that has just formed an adventuring party before the bad kids drag them away to all the chaos that has happened in the cafeteria with the corn keys and everything. Is that them?
You know what? I didn't have that intention, but let's say yeah.
Great.
Let's say it is.
Great. Because I had that thought, because I was like, oh, she would want to talk to Golden Horde, because he would kind of know what's going on with him compared to everyone else.
For sure, absolutely. And I think too that there's a thing with that, like there's sort of you can't have it both ways, right? Like the strategy that the rat grinders employ to get powerful is to do this like grinding. Eventually they get leveled up also by these powerful monsters that are being killed, they're allowed to like join in with. Yeah. But fundamentally, there's this, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And Kipper Lily as a villain to me is very focused on like, ooh, I can get by with the letter of the law and not the spirit. Like there's a better way to get powerful as an adventurer other than going on these important missions where you can probably die. Like that's the other thing too, is you look at the bad kids run into that corn gremlin fight and 2 of them die. They took a huge risk to save the school and stop something bad from happening. And the rat grinders never take that risk. So even as Kipper Lily is like, why aren't I getting what they're getting? And it's like, you're not making the choices they're making. Mm-hmm. Like obviously grinding rats in the woods is a safer way to gain levels. And the reward for doing it the safe way is you've never saved the world. Yeah.
And then I loved all the new NPCs we got, but what inspired you to really pull back on some of the older NPCs? Because last time we talked, you kind of said you didn't want to feel like a sitcom where there were people just jumping in just to say hi. But there was also the element of like, Eggfort could have helped, but because we had him pulled back, it was like way more pressure for the bad kids.
A lot of this was returning to a mirror of freshman year, like even ending the fight at the gymnasium and the year-long mystery of it all. I think that like first of all, Ida and Arthur being on this big road trip together felt funny to me, and it's also a part of Ida's story that was like her and her relationship to her father is a big question mark at the end of sophomore year. Like that's an intense thing. And so the idea of them having this bonding trip while she's writing love letters to Fig from the ancient past felt very fun. But like you're right too, like Eggfort needs to be gone for some of these story elements to happen with Grix, with the student president election and everything else like that. And then I think like, I wanted to, it's really important to grow, and it's really important to give yourself challenges. Obviously we have some beloved NPCs that are around. Aelwyn and Rog are very present in the season, but like, if junior year is just a celebration of the creative choices we made in freshman and sophomore year, I think it becomes stale. And like you're saying, like if all that sophomore year was like talking about the NPCs we love from freshman year, maybe we don't meet Ida. who's, you know, like, so I think it was important to like give space in the season for new characters like Maisie, Phaedra, you know, or even some very minor characters just like Gertie Bladeshield, or, you know, like, I just love those characters. It's fun to see them get a moment to like shine and to also blow out Eggfort. Be like, no, this is a much larger school. There's a lot going on.
I love that. Also, Gertie going, we're nemesis now because we kissed once and you don't want to date me forever is amazing. So hinged.
Yes, 100%. Well, we see that Gertie really is quick to declare nemesis. It's nuts. Gertie, Fabian, and Kristen. There's a lot going on.
I loved it. I also love that you actually made Gleer cursed and passed that on to Fig. I thought that was such a cool thing to have Fig grapple with this season. That was great.
And that was a lot of that was coming from Emily. Emily wanted some fun mechanical stuff to grapple with. She was like, could Fig be having like a problem with her powers? And so we came up with the curse actually to accommodate Emily's desire to kind of do what Fabian did in sophomore year and have like a diminishment in powers be a fun part of the game.
I loved it. Also, how dare you end this on a cliffhanger with Kalina, Buddy Dawn, and the birth of Baccarat?
Let's go.
I was like, come on, Brennan, we had it all wrapped up and now you're making me want a senior year. What are you doing?
I don't think I will ever end a Fantasy High season with not a cliffhanger. Because the thing with Fantasy High is it's set in a world that's making fun, lovingly poking fun at a lot of D&D tropes. And one of the things about D&D worlds, like if you look at Middle Earth has Sauron. It used to have Morgoth, but now it has one bad guy with one ring that you have to throw in one volcano. D&D worlds are made to have endless adventure. Mm-hmm. And in a world of endless adventure, it feels insane. There's so many bad guys. There's so many evil factions. How many dungeons full of monsters are there? This place is lousy with monsters. And so the idea of Fantasy High, in a world where there's an adventuring high school, think about how a world would need to be to warrant a high school for adventurers. That means that there are 20 apocalypses going on at any time, right? There are so many problems. So every season has to end in the cliffhanger. Otherwise, what was the adventuring high school for? It can't ever just be okay. There's got to be a new problem.
I love that. That's insane, and I absolutely love that.
Always a new thing.
How fun has it been to like create this pantheon from the ground up? Because you had the established lore of Spire that you initially created, and then it's grown with every new season. But having like Cassandra and Baccarat and all of this elements, like how has it been to kind of weave that into these characters' stories while also creating the bigger lore of Spire?
It's the part of the show that's grown the most organically, and it's also a testament to the power of PCs. This world building is in relation to Allie Beardsley's choice of how to play Kristen. If Kristen is not on a journey of discovery and questioning, we don't get any of this insight into the gods. Ankarna, Ruvina, Galatea Sol, Helio, Cassandra, obviously. There's one thing too. I'll point something out because someone mentioned to me, they were like, how was the name Cassandra written if Kristen made up the name Cassandra in sophomore year? I have never interpreted Allie saying Cassandra as creating the name. I have always interpreted it as Kristen remembering the name. That when I asked Allie to make it up, it was pulling the name out of the ancient past, and like it was literally revelation. Like it was a moment of divine revelation as Kristen goes, "Your name is Cassandra," and returns the ancient name. So a little asterisk from your boy.
I feel like that's a much deeper explanation than just, I don't know, Cassandra, I guess.
Cassandra, I guess. Yeah, 100%. That's my explanation anyway. But yeah, it's a joy, and I love the Pantheon, and I love Logran Soulforger from the Seven. It rules, and I'm deeply grateful for like having this many seasons to explore it. I think like and there's no plans to at the moment, but should we ever come back to Spire, I have a lot of ideas for how to add a like really cool level of complexity to that particular part of the world building, and like thinking about what Kristen's journey is. I don't know. I would be very excited to one day, far, far in the future, get back in the saddle with Allie and deal with the gods of Spire.
I really hope we do that. What I was actually curious about, like, not Fantasy High senior year, because I figure it's going to be like 5 years from now if we get that. But is there a part of Spire you'd like to explore further, be it like in the current timeline or even the past, like looking at Sandra Lynn's history and that kind of stuff? Is there something where you've been like, oh, that's really interesting, we touched on it, but we never really dug into it?
I think there's so much lore to Spire, and it's the nature also of these improvisational stories that you're never going to be able to touch on everything. And there's also a big part of it too that's like, to make these worlds feel real, you cannot have an efficiency of information that everything always relates to a central plot and wraps up. Like every once in a while, like, you know, like Lydia's adventuring party, Lydia Barker's adventuring party. It's like, oh, there's parts of that tie into the main thing, but also Lydia just had an adventuring party. She was an adventurer, right? Like they had other stuff they were doing. And you see that a lot of like, what's the vulture dimension? I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. Like the world is big and vast and full of strangeness. And I think that definitely backstory stuff, you know, Sandra Lynn's backstory has partially been hinted at in that season. And that was definitely intentionally left. There was enough going on this season, but that's the revelation. So like Sandra Lynn's backstory and the NPCs that we see that she's connected to, that's something left for like future seasons, you know, potentially. But again, none of that's being discussed right now. But like in other words, you know, Spire always has more problems. You solve one thing, and then you know, the next problem reveals itself. It's the nature of a world built around constantly needing adventure. Yeah,
this is not a calm world at any capacity.
Never, and it never will be. Not with Arthur Eggford. Now give me a break.
No. Which character's story did you find the most surprising this season?
That's a great question. I think that, well, K2, you know, I'd say, no, I think the one that I found the most surprising probably, I do think actually like Kristen. I do think Kristen ending a season with the same god she started with is a change, right? And it reflects a growth in the character, because there's a world where she goes like, okay, I'm going to save Cassandra, but then I'm moving on. And she doesn't move on. And I think that I was very ready for Allie to, just for like continuing to hit the character game of like, okay, it's not doubt. But no, like there is a firmness there. And I think that would be a very fun thing to explore with that character in the future too. And being like, okay, I left a thing that wasn't working for me. And then I left the thing that I went to after that thing. And then I got here and there's problems again. Does that mean I leave? No, now I don't leave. Now I stay and fix the problems. And I think that is a very cool thing to see. In a like story of deconstruction and revelation and reinvention. Like, what does the choice mean to keep going even though it's not ideal when you get there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think her having a pantheon makes the most sense for Kristen, just because she, like, doubt is a hard one to land on and have that be the only thing. So having like the Daybreak and all that stuff like really makes sense for that element too. I thought that was a very cool decision that I hope we see play out.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I think it's like, that part of that journey and the relationship there between, you know, conviction and doubt, you know, justice and mystery, like it just feels there's something there that you want to honor both those things, and it feels very cool. Yeah, I love it. I love that world, and I love the players so much and all the decisions they made. It was just incredible.
I loved it. This easily top tier season for me. you guys make it so hard for me to rank them because every time I'm like, these are my top 5. You have a new season. I'm like, come on. You can't do that.
Yes. Well, I deeply appreciate it. I think we're all so proud of junior year. It was such a joy to make it. It was so much fun to be back in that world. That reveal that was so many years in the making of getting to show that clip from sophomore year. It just felt great. It's just been a true joy. Cast and crew, it's just such a pleasure to work with everybody. It's amazing.
I love it. I can't wait to talk to you again. I'm so excited for the next season. I'm so hyped to see you GM a game at Madison Square Garden.
What's going on? I know, it's crazy.
Just all the congratulations, Brennan. I hope for all the success for all of you. I absolutely love Dropout in Dimension 20, and your very important people character is unhinged.
Thank you. I don't remember a single thing I did as Ogbert. I was sweating like someone had turned a hose on. It was I was so hot. I have no memory of that shoot day. But I'm very glad that people seem to like it.
It feels particularly mean to cover you in fur and long hair.
Conversations were had where I went, hey, if I'm ever back on this show, maybe I'm a guy in like a tank top and shorts. That'd be fun. We could do that. You want to do that next time? Not put me in a carpet? Spirit gum on my face, covered in hair? I'm already covered in hair. I don't need more hair. That was delightful. It was such a joy. And Vic Michaelis is like the best. So I don't know. It was life is really good. I'm very proud of these projects, and I deeply appreciate your kind words. It's always a pleasure to talk.
I always love talking to you.
And that's all for Dimension 20 Fantasy High Junior Year.